Good evening. My name is Laney Marx.
And I'm Amanda Bopp.
It is our honor this evening, on behalf of Class of 2015, to introduce our work on the FIT Master's Program First Global Quantitative Research Study and our partner, the Boston Consulting Group.
It seems fitting to open tonight's presentation with the foundation for all of our work, the consumer, and insights about her behavior and desires. We've had the wonderful learning opportunity throughout the past 6 months to work closely with the Boston Consulting Group. Together, we fielded a global luxury customer survey. The work will guide our presentations tonight.
We have had the pleasure of working with a key leader, stakeholder, and mentor to all of us throughout this process, Sarah Willersdorf. Sarah is a principal at BCG New York, and we are grateful for her leadership on this project and the support of her team both in Paris and New York. My research co-lead Amanda Bopp and I will join Sarah this evening in presenting an overview of the findings of the BCG FIT Global Luxury Customer Survey.
Thank you. It was really BCG's pleasure to team with this graduating FIT class. I have no doubt that you have your future leaders back behind here because they're really a great and talented group. So I know you're going to love seeing all the presentations tonight. So let's see. We drew on two main sources of data during the work together. The first was BCG's annual luxury survey we do in conjunction with Altagamma. This is a survey of 10,000 consumers across 10 countries. And then, as Pamela mentioned, we also fielded a new independent piece of research, which we're really excited to share just a few of the insights tonight. This is a piece of research across US, India, China. We were most excited actually around India because I feel like we all see a lot of research for the USA and China. So hopefully it's going to be exciting for you tonight. Now, we could keep you here for hours and hours showing you all sorts of data, which we're not going to do. Instead, we thought it would be easier to pull out what we think are the 5 main themes that are, number 1, most relevant to brands, and number 2, really underline the students' presentations you're going to see tonight. So I'm going to quickly whiz you through the themes, and then we'll jump in. The first is we continue to see introverted qualities around quality, exclusivity, and craftsmanship as most important to consumers. And I think for many in the room, it may not seem a surprise, but actually the fact that they're so strong in so many countries is interesting. And actually in many countries, we're starting to even see a little bit of, I don't want to call it luxury fatigue, but a movement towards wanting less logos and more around the quality and the customization and things like that. Second, being versus owning. So this is a trend we've been seeing for a couple of years, but certainly the research we fielded together shows that we continue to see a shift from owning personal goods to experiencing them. And we see this a couple of ways. So first of all, growth in experiential luxury is accelerating much faster than personal goods. And secondly, we see consumers demanding more and more experience in their purchase pathway. E-commerce. So by now I imagine most people are sick of hearing about e-commerce, but luxury companies in general were very late to the e-commerce game. And we see again in this survey the importance of e-commerce and also the different roles of channels depending on category and country. Advocacy marketing. So word of mouth is another area that I believe luxury companies have always really excelled at. But more than ever before, we see word of mouth marketing being the #1 influencer of luxury purchases. And there just needs to be a more systematic approach towards it. And finally, alternate distribution models. So with the emergence of subscription and rental models, especially in the US, we decided to actually explore some of these and see what the opportunity was to try and make some small bets around subscription and rental models for luxury brands elsewhere in the world. So I'm going to hand over to Laney to kick off.
Thank you, Sarah. To kick off consumer values, we asked 3,000 luxury consumers, what does luxury mean to you? The new definition, there isn't one. What is the impact for brands today? A huge opportunity for brands to craft your own story and redefine what luxury means in the category. Across all 3 markets, words such as quality and comfort spiked as new definitions of luxury. This tells us that consumers are not just looking to project luxury outwards, but rather asking themselves, what will this product or service do to improve my life? Taking a deeper dive into this more personal, individual definition of luxury, BCG defines luxury in two ways: introverted, or luxury for yourself, and extroverted, luxury for others. Overall, as shown here in the dark green, we see a preference towards introverted luxury across all markets. This means that consumers are purchasing luxury based on the four values of quality, exclusivity, craftsmanship, and timelessness. We do see that more mature markets, like Japan and the US, have a slightly higher preference towards introverted luxury, and whereas developing markets, like China and Brazil, have a more equal split. Overall, the research suggests that the approach taken should differ by geography and should mirror the values celebrated in each market. When asked if you could have any one thing for your birthday, consumers across all three markets chose experiences over personal goods. The number one response across all markets and all generations was a weekend away. The US tends to favor more experiences, with a night out as the number two option, whereas China and India have a preference towards personal goods, selecting technology as number two and new clothes as third. Building on this idea of experiences over stuff, we've identified that consumers are spending a larger share of their wallet on travel. As consumers age, travel takes an increasingly proportion of their luxury spend. Beauty is the entry point to luxury, as shown here with the 18 to 34-year-old customers. But as they age, we see a larger share of wallet spent on luxury accessories and finally travel services. The implication here is to speak to the luxury consumer with the right message, hook them early, and carry the brand throughout their different life cycles. Now, back over to Sarah.
Okay, so as I mentioned before, we've found luxury brands to be a little slow to e-commerce and omnichannel, but what's clear is that luxury consumers are actually really demanding omnichannel as part of their experience. The data you're seeing here is only for luxury purchases, and what you can see is that like three out of four consumers are actually asking for omnichannel, and are actually 40% of those consumers are saying that it's not negotiable for them. I think what's also interesting is when you look at the split by country. So the fact that we see China and Korea as having the highest demand for omnichannel, I think is really interesting, because many brands today, I think, are actually putting Asia as the sort of second place to invest their e-commerce and omnichannel, and this would suggest that actually you may need to start investing more quickly to get ahead there. If we think about the actual breakdown of spend, the chart on the left side is actually showing the breakdown of luxury purchases, and again, this is luxury purchases across personal goods and services by channel. Online has clearly arrived. 40% of the millennials' spend is through online, and around 30% of non-millennial. I think it's interesting. We used to see a much bigger difference between millennial and non-millennial, and I think that's closing. What's more interesting is if we think about what makes up that online spend. We can see that own branded websites are important. We can see that multi-brand websites, so department store.coms, etc., are important. But what's also interesting is how big marketplaces are. We obviously have Amazon in many countries, but especially if you think about this survey being across US, China and India with the growth of Tmall, JD.com, Flipkart, marketplaces like this, it's really driving some of these categories. And if we deep dive further and look at the breakdown of online spend by category and by country, I think this just makes the point more clear. If we look at the yellow part of the chart here, these are basically online marketplaces within beauty and accessories. And you can see in India in particular, where some of the more accessible luxury brands are starting to sell on marketplaces, that it's actually taking up a large percentage of spend. You also see own branded websites being particularly important, especially in China. And I think the message really here is, in developing your e-commerce strategy, it's critical to find the role of each of the e-commerce channels, your own brand website versus e-retail versus marketplaces, and come up with clear strategies for each of them and for each country.
In today's dynamic marketplace, it is important to understand changes in tactics which ultimately drive purchase. Our data suggests that peer affirmation and recommendations are increasingly important as word of mouth now ranks #1 globally as the #1 influencer of purchase decision. Word of mouth is even more important in developing economies like China, where 58% of consumers say word of mouth influences the products they purchase. Consumers also reflect an interest in participating in luxury brands through events. Consider that in 2013, events ranked as #7 in terms of overall importance, but jumped up to the #3 position in 2014. Also important to consumers are the influence of magazines. Much has been said about print being dead. However, the data suggests otherwise. Magazines continue to influence 1/3 of consumers globally. Finally, consumers are reflecting continued interest in customization and personalization, as tailored messages now outrank celebrities and TV in terms of their ability to influence purchase decision. Just as shifts are evident in the impact of marketing tactics, so too are changes in the way in which consumers receive products. Rental and shared ownership models, such as Airbnb, Zipcar, and Rent the Runway, are growing in popularity. To further validate the opportunity in the shared ownership space, we wanted to dedicate some questions in the survey to understand to what degree customers are interested in renting versus owning. We specifically asked, which product category would you be more likely to rent a product versus purchase it? Consumers in emerging markets clearly demonstrate a higher preference towards renting versus customers in the US. For example, 1/3 of customers in China express interest in renting a wedding dress. If that's the case today, where rental models are still growing and emerging, imagine the possibilities that exist in the future. Another example of an emerging business model are subscription services, such as Birchbox and Blue Apron. Millennial customers clearly demonstrate a greater degree of openness towards subscription services relative to non-millennials. What is consistent across age groups, though, is interest in receiving monthly goods from food and skincare products. This is perhaps partially due to the replenishment nature of both of these categories. Keep in mind that 1/3 of millennials said that they would like to receive monthly products of skincare. Think about that and the implications for your brands. Similar to rental models, customers in emerging markets show greater interest in subscription service relative to Americans. Interestingly, the only category for which Americans want a consistent monthly supply more so than their foreign counterparts is actually wine. Yet, 1/3 of Indian and Chinese consumers also say they are willing to receive a monthly subscription of skincare. Globally, we believe skincare is the next opportunity for subscription services.
So what does this mean for luxury players? Number one, continue to invest in messaging on those introverted values. So messages around quality and craftsmanship are really still resonating with consumers, especially in the developed economies. But more than this, it's about actually targeting the message across the different countries. Second, invest in experiential luxury and continue to try and bring more of this experience to the purchase pathway. Experience is defined in many different ways for consumers. Often it's just convenience, but other times it's like thinking about the full end-to-end purchase pathway right through to delivery and later on returns. Number three, e-commerce. So the time has come. If you haven't invested, you need to invest in e-commerce. You need to think about all the channels separately. It's not enough to rely on e-retailers to do this sort of role for you. I think it's also about developing own e-commerce. And then with respect to marketplaces, making a choice of what to do with them. Many of your brands are on them, even if you're not actively on them. And especially in emerging markets, I think they represent a slightly different proposition than maybe in many of the developed markets here. Word of mouth. So word of mouth is always a strength, but this is about investing systematically in word of mouth. And more than this, I think the message is around marketing. Many industries, you hear very often now, print is dead, magazines are not important, but actually beauty and luxury and fashion, it's different. And you can see from this data, and as many of you will know and I'm sure resonates, print is still important. Events are more important than ever before. So I think it's about really targeting the marketing within our industry. And finally, test alternate distribution models. We can see that, subscription and rental models, they're really just beginning. They're very, very small in terms of sales today. But we see there's an appetite with consumers for these. And I think this is one area where big brands can learn from startups and try and fail small, fail often, and fail fast. Now, I know we've sort of bombarded you with many, many charts, which we love to do, but I know you're all here to see the presentation, so hand over to the students for those now. Thank you.